Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, we can get into that right now. Weekly segment we do after every game, going over two things that excited us and one thing we still have a question about after that's last week. Week 5, Ducks come out with a big win, but Owen, excited to hear. What was the first thing that you were excited about after this game?
These freshman running backs, man. These guys, especially De'Aaron Hill. I got my box score.
They delivered on your on the Daily Emerald the cover story there.
Makes me feel happy inside. De'Aaron Hill goes 10 for 85. 85 gain, net 82 yards, long of 24. That was twice. And Jordan Davison looks like a phenomenal blocker. He punches it in, like we talked about on that drive. These guys are, I've got some quotes up on my wall here. They're years beyond their time. They're Jaden Lamar after Northwestern. So there's no drop off with these young guys. Dan Lanning says when there's a lot of young talent, you have to understand where you put those reps. Whittington's talking. This is him talking about Davison. No one's stopping him for 1 yard, 2 yard, 3 yard. He goes all the way up to 7. These guys are so phenomenal. And in a game where there weren't a lot of explosive plays, you need explosive players. De'Aaron Hill is that explosive, man. I've seen people talking about whether he's the RB1. I'm curious. We can have that discussion. But I think, number one, these guys are phenomenal on their own. And number two, Penn State is the peak of having 2 running backs. These guys complement each other so well.
Yeah, like you said, with Penn State, you go into this game and the storyline going into it is what we talked about all week, which what a lot of people asked Dan Lanning about during media last week. How are you going to stop Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton, because those guys each went for over 100 yards. It was close to 300 on the ground from the team in total in that Big Ten championship game last year. And Oregon goes out there and they have 2 freshman running backs who outplay those guys who are the,
it's not talked
about as one of the, up there with Notre Dame as like the best running back duos in the country. And Oregon has 2 true freshmen. And, the Ducks went to, I think it was their highest rate of 21 personnel this season. They did a bunch of stuff with Hill, with Davison in there. Davison as a blocker a bunch, where he has been really, really good in that physicality and that size. And like you said, Hill just kind of brings that extra, he has that juice, man. That the same thing that Noah Whitting can do for this team when he's healthy. But
and he's like 210 pounds, right? Like this is a relatively big dude. This is
not, I think he's listed
190 pounds.
I think Hill's listed like 200 or 205. He was like 180, 190 in high school, and he's put on a little bit since then. But he was really able to open this game up once he started gashing, especially in the second half. Those touchdown drives are set up because he hits a 24-yarder, then he's going for 9, 10 on a couple of those carries. Really impressed by the 2 of those guys. And with the RB1 discussions with Hill, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him get the most touches in this offense at this point, but I think it should absolutely remain a rotation, because that's, what really makes this running back room so deadly together is when you do have the mix and the rotation and these different looks that you can go to and bring in a Jordan Davison for short yardage or for blocking, and Jalen Lamar, same thing. So I wouldn't mind seeing Hill get the most touches going forward, but it doesn't mean I want to see him be the RB1 in terms of, like first guy on the field for those snaps.
Yeah.
All right. Going to first thing for me that had me excited from that game. I mean, talking about the way that this team shut down Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton, what the defensive line was able to do to those guys, to this Penn State, not necessarily to those guys, but what they were able to do to the Penn State, especially the interior of that offensive line, some of the tackles as well. Bear Alexander, Amari Washington, Mateo Uyunglele, Tatum 280, all of those guys. I was going through the tape for the defense this morning. I mean, we've seen a lot of people talk about what Bear Alexander did in that game as like, his coming out party. He hasn't been starting all season. He hasn't gotten those snaps necessarily all year, but it's been on tape. He's eating these double teams. He's playing really good against the run. It's why they got him in there next to Amari Washington right now. And he had a phenomenal game on Saturday. 5 tackles for him, gets a tackle for loss. He's just in the backfield throughout the tape all over that one. Same with Mateo Uyunglele. And to hold, Kaytron Allen, Nick Singleton, these guys come into the game, averaged over 6 yards per carry. They hold them down around 3. And until that fourth quarter, when Penn State did finally get things going, 47 rushing yards on 21 carries the first 3 quarters, 2 yards per carry for a team in Penn State who that's, what their offense is based on. They run the ball and then work, with all their misdirection and stuff with Aller off of that. But it completely shut down this offense, and it really started with the defensive line. And after a couple of weeks ago, they they struggled against Northwestern. Not struggled, but didn't play to the level that, we know that these guys can be at. And they lived up to that against Penn State. I was really, really impressed.
Yeah, again, it's in-season growth. We talked about the fact, hey, this wide receiver room is really impressive because, that they've grown, and there are guys who have taken steps, not only like in the offseason when you're just working and nobody can see, but they take steps in games, in season, this defensive line. Bear Alexander is more proof of concept that, guys can come here, and he's a guy who, is a fantastic player, but, maybe hasn't found his rhythm yet, and he finds it at Oregon. This was our big point. Ducks had to stop the run in order to win this game, and they did. It didn't really start working for Penn State until they stopped going, just between the tackles and started trying to get guys on linebackers outside and going with sweeps to Pena. So impressed. They really stood up.
Definitely. All right, where are we going with this next thing that's got you excited on?
Coming back to Dante Moore. He is for real. We knew he was for real through 4 weeks because this guy put some unbelievable throws on tape because he led these 2-minute drill situations and these 4-minute drill situations. And we said, hey, I think he's the real deal. He can run this offense. He's the point guard. Now he's for real. He goes into Penn State and does all the same. He gets the opportunity to lead a 2-minute drive, and if not for that holding penalty, it's moving. It's happening. We'll go back to the point. We already talked about it, so I won't spend too much time on it. But his poise. This was, I feel like this was the last thing you need to see from him to say this guy is a draft ready quarterback. He's grown since UCLA. He learned everything he could from Dylan Gabriel and Will Stein, and all these guys. And this is a dude, man.
Definitely. I mean, back to what I just said, 10 minutes ago or so about Dante, but just incredible poise throughout that game, operating the offense really well. And then, like you said, to go into that environment, it was, the Dante Moore had been through the first couple of weeks of the season looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but because Oregon hadn't really played anybody to that level yet, people still weren't ready to kind of elevate him into those conversations. And after that game, he's clearly there. Dan Lanning said he's the best quarterback in the country. The Heisman odds are showing it as well. Dante Moore, like you said, for real. He is the a very big, he's the heart of this team. I mean, it's the quarterback, but this team does not go in there and win this game against Penn State if Dante Moore doesn't play at the level that he does and outplay Drew Aller in that game. And then that's really what things came down to, because Dante Moore doesn't make a mistake and Drew Aller does, and that's what cost Penn State the game in the end.
Yeah, and people, we can talk all we want about whether Drew Aller is like, if he's one of those guys who you want to take for your NFL team. He is a good college football quarterback. This is not an easy guy to outplay. He's playing somewhere where he's very comfortable with a team he knows very well. Don't take anything away from Dante Moore for outplaying Drew Aller.
Definitely. All right. So my next thing I'm excited about, going back to the defense, but backside of the defense, the secondary absolutely shut down throughout this game. Drew Aller finishes it 137 pass yards and a pick. Does have 2 touchdowns, but Penn State's wide receivers just really could not get anything going until Devontae Ross picks up most of those yards on that big touchdown play from Drew Aller, then catches another touchdown on a sick little shovel pass designed by Andy Kotelnicki for that second touchdown. But overall, Penn State's receivers combined 10 targets, 6 catches, 64 yards. Oregon's secondary, just phenomenal work throughout that game. Dylan Thieneman was a monster. We saw it on the pick. And the cornerbacks have been, they haven't really gotten the discussion because they haven't been targeted that much because, Oregon's done so well in the run. You'll have people haven't been talking about them because you don't see them on TV because no one throws it in their direction. But if Brandon Finney gets targeted one time through that game, comeback route, he's playing man coverage on it. He's all over it the entire time. If Obadegu doesn't get targeted a single time. And for those two guys, you got a true freshman and a redshirt freshman who was hurt for most of last year. This season, through 5 games, they've been targeted 15 times, 6 catches, 77 yards. That's it. It's a completion percentage below 50%. They're quick to the ball afterwards. The secondary is really, really good and is becoming one of the, for a group that we'll get into it later this episode. We're gonna go back revisit our position group draft from before the season, kind of redraft those a month later after we've seen some of this football. But we look back then, and both of us were the cornerbacks were the last position group I took, because this was a young group. We weren't sure what was going to happen, and they've been really, really good this season. Theron Johnson played really, really good in that game too. They did rotate him and Sione Laulea in there as well. Laulea, I'd say, had the weakest game out of all of them. Had a couple times where he did get beat, was grabbing or anything, like some things like that. But overall, still really solid. But yeah, Finney, Obadegwu, Theron Johnson. When you combine that with what Thieneman does as a safety, Aaron Flowers has been really, really good playing the run. Secondary huge in that game. So very excited with the direction that this group is heading, and especially when if Obadegwu and Brandon Finney are going to be back next year.
Yeah, and it just goes back to how mature these freshmen are, how strong they were. And I asked Dylan Thieneman about this last week during midweek press conferences, and I didn't get the question in post game. I was curious what he would have said. We just asked about like what it takes to connect these two teams, and we talked about this a little bit post game, but I wanted to bring it back up here. I'm so impressed by the way these guys have been able to find a rhythm together and work together. We've only seen a couple of coverage busts in the Oregon State game once, and then something that happened I think with Taco Dowler in Montana State. It feels like their communication keeps growing, and that's not an easy thing to do when especially you're young, but also these are guys who haven't played together. It's that for me is the most impressive thing.
And that, especially when that was the thing that's what hurt this team last year in the college football playoff, in the Big Ten championship game where Allard was able to hit some touchdowns. It was miscommunication on the backside of that secondary. And when Penn State, I didn't get through all of it. I'm like partway into the fourth quarter. I had to go to class earlier, so I didn't get through all of the defensive tape. But from what I was charting, Penn State had a motion shift something on almost every play, and if they weren't, they were going tempo, because they want to keep things confused. And Dan talked about how last year they had a lot of times where, again, in that Big Ten championship game, the defensive line didn't have their hand in the dirt yet. They were still talking on the back end, trying to get things ready. And that was, there were a few times where that happened still, because Penn State was trying to play fast, trying to cause confusion, but Oregon handled it so much better this time. And as I've been saying all season, I think Dylan Thieneman's communication in the secondary has been so huge for this group, especially when you do have as many young guys around him as you do. Yeah. All right. Where does the question still lie for you after this game? What are you still feeling unsure about after week 5 here?
Okay. Oh, I'm going in a little bit of a different direction. I want to ask, is this bye week in a good spot for the Ducks, or will it really derail some momentum? Because we talked about how late the Ducks bye week was last season, and it meant that they do go undefeated, but they're getting beat up, and that matters when you have guys out in the postseason. Do you feel like this bye week is in a good spot for the Ducks? Is it a spot where you say, hey, it's a big win, let's reset? Let's look at this Indiana game because it is a big game. Or would you rather not? This is interesting, but either have another conference game there, or say, hey, let's play Indiana right away, like roll off that momentum and look straight at it and have your bye week somewhere else.
I definitely see where you're coming from in terms of derailing momentum, because you do feel like the momentum was so high and in such a good spot after that Penn State game. But overall, I mean, we were saying it before the season when we were looking at the schedule. We saw that bye and said, hey, that's a really good spot to have a bye, because you have this build up, the early part of the season, you play that weaker schedule, then you have the game on the road at Penn State, and then to not only learn from that, we were at the time thinking, hey, that's going to be a good game. That could be one they lose. So you learn from those mistakes. Oregon doesn't really have many of those mistakes, but still, there's going to be stuff they're learning from. But just the rest and recovery time, that was a physical football game. You played extra of it too. You played overtime. Whittington needs time to just, he's been banged up. Justice Lowe's been banged up. All these guys. I think this is going to be really good for them, because it's been a push through this first month of the season to get to that Penn State game. Now you're there, reset, rest this week, get everybody's bodies right, because you do have a big game coming up. But at the same time, don't let that Indiana game slip by you, because you're resting on the laurels of such a big win on the road at Penn State. Indiana, I mean, they're a top 10 team in the country for a reason. They are looking like one of the more dangerous teams in the Big Ten, besides that Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, trio at the top. So you got to stay ready for them and be on your toes these next couple of weeks. And this gives you plenty of time to prep for a team that is going to bring a lot at you, especially on offense, with what Kirk Cinetti does and Fernando Mendoza this season at quarterback.
Yeah, and I want to throw like Indiana's on bye this week too, so this is a good spot because a lot of teams that Oregon plays are coming off bye this season. It looks a lot like Washington's schedule last year, and this is the one that you'd want to be the most rested for out of those games, and you get a chance to be equally rested instead of having to play a team that's coming off a bye in a big game.
Absolutely, the Ducks have a lot of like schedule disadvantages and rest disadvantages, so this is a good spot to even that out against a team like Indiana. For me, the question is how did Penn State get back into this game? Because after Oregon does go up 17-3 with Jordan Davison's touchdown, about 12-13 minutes left in that one, it felt to me like this one was heading towards, wow, this is a statement for Oregon. But all of a sudden, 4 plays, Penn State quickly scores a touchdown under 2 minutes, and they get it back after not a 3-and-out, but Oregon gets 1 first down and then punts it away. And it's a bad punt, like only a 30-yard punt by James Ferguson Reynolds that goes out of bounds around the 40, and then Penn State puts together a 6.5-minute touchdown drive, goes 15 plays, where they're just converting, and that's what really killed Oregon down the stretch. And the defense, you could just see how tired they were by the end of that, because a drive starts off, Penn State gets into a 3rd and 9, Aller scrambles for 20 yards, then they get into a 4th and 1, Singleton converts it, then they get into another 4th and 1, at this time Aller keys it and converts it himself. So then another 3rd and 1, they go to the same jet power read that they were doing all night with Aller converts it again, and then they set up the touchdown eventually to Devontae Ross. But that drive was really killer, almost backbreaking for the Ducks. And I was after that point, it felt like the momentum was starting to slip away, especially as we headed towards overtime. So I was concerned at that point, but then at the same time, really impressed by the way this team was able to rally, recover, not let, how tiring that drive was, kind of get them down and still be able to get out and go during overtime. So Penn State does get back into this game. As I was looking at it, that's really the thing that did come away as the biggest concern for me, because Oregon did play so strong throughout this entire game. So that would be the one thing for me, just letting them back into this one. But Penn State's a really good football team. It's hard to keep them out of these games at the end of the day, and especially when you're only have 17 points. So
yeah,
Oregon did a good job resetting after that, though. So
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these 2 drives, and like that they have different concerns to me. That this drive that's basically just 4 explosives, pretty much.
Yeah.
We talked about how successful the secondary was, especially when they're in so much hurry up and there's so much motion. That's where kind of started to fall apart a little bit. And they're able to recover, but that's interesting to see that that does happen. And this other drive, this long drive, yeah, like the rushes are 1 yard, then 20, 8, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 2, 2, 3 before the touchdown pass. They start being able to. Yeah, and they start being able to go short yardage.
4th downs, exactly. Yeah,
they were relying on these, on Keyshawn Allen's ability to break a big run, but suddenly it's hey, we can get into 2nd and short, we can get into 3rd and short, and be able to open up options. Suddenly it's not 3rd and 9 every play, and Drew Aller makes a great play on 3rd and 9, but Penn State finally put itself in a situation to succeed, and part of that's Oregon not being able to stop the run short.
Definitely.